Hello, everyone. Welcome. I see that folks are starting to log in and getting settled, getting connected to audio, getting connected to video and everything. It's good to see everyone this evening. Well, it's evening where I'm from. I'm in Boston right now, but I know that folks are coming from all over the place. And so we're going to give it a minute or two for folks to continue to log in and get settled and everything. But I would love to get a survey of who's in the room, in the Zoom room with us tonight. And so if you're feeling up for it, I would love to see in the chat where you're coming from to this evening, where you're calling from. And panelists, feel free to put it in the chat as well. Excellent. I see a wide range of different places. Connecticut, Singapore, Dubai, Florida, San Francisco, Ohio, New Jersey, New Hampshire, India, excellent. Boston, yes, Massachusetts, great. New York, Texas, Illinois, this is excellent. All over, North Carolina, New York, New Jersey, Boston, excellent. Awesome. So thank you everyone so much for joining us tonight. I know that folks are still coming in, and I just wanted to let you all know that the session is being recorded. So if that's an issue, please let us know. But we're so excited to have you join us for our very first session of our summer programming for incoming students. And so we're so excited to welcome you all as new students to Khoury College of Computer Science and also to Northeastern. I know that as new students, you probably have a lot of questions, feeling really eager to get started in the fall, might have some nerves around what that experience is like. And so our goal with this summer and our summer programming and the series is to make sure that we provide this opportunity for you all to get your questions answered, for you to learn more information about what it's like to be a Khoury student, what it's like to be a Northeastern student, and just feel more prepared for this academic year. And so the goal is for you to meet current students, to meet incoming students as well, those who are in the same shoes as you are, and to start that community building before we see each other in the fall. And so for our session tonight, so this is the first of a three-part series on student perspectives, where tonight we'll talk more about academic resources and campus resources and really providing that foundation to your start here at Northeastern and in Khoury College. So for our time together tonight, we will do some panelist introductions. I have 4 current Khoury students with us tonight who will be sharing their perspectives. I have a couple questions for our panelists to speak a bit more about their experiences, and then there'll be plenty of time at the end for you all to share any questions that you have and make sure that we answer them. All right, and if you have any questions at all, feel free to continue to post in the chat and let us know, and I'll continue to monitor the chat throughout. And so without further ado, we will do some introductions of the panelists. And so tonight we have 4 panelists with us. We have Gigi, Rachel, Ryan, and Annika. And so if you would like to each introduce yourself, we'll start off with Gigi, then Rachel, then Ryan, then Annika.
Hi, yeah. Hi, everyone. So I'm Gigi. I'm going into my 3rd year here at Northeastern. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Let's see, my major is computer science, and I have a concentration in human-centered computing along with a minor in information ethics. And then this summer, I just started my first co-op. I'm doing software engineering at Johnson & Johnson. A little bit about my other experiences at Northeastern. I'm also involved in a couple clubs on campus, including Multi and Northeastern Women in Tech. And then I've also TA'd for a class called Human-Computer Interaction.
All right, and I'm Rachel. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm also a rising 3rd year. I'm majoring in data science with a minor in marketing. And this past year, I was the treasurer for NEWITS, which is Northeastern Women in Tech Club. And then I'll be the incoming president for that. And right now I'm co-oping at a startup called Predict AP, and I'm just doing software engineering work.
Hey, my name is Ryan. My pronouns are he, him. I'm also a rising 3rd year. I'm a computer science major. I think my concentration is in software. I think it is, I'm not really sure. And I have a minor in interaction design. And yeah, at Northeastern, I've been a TA for Fundies 1. I went on co-op last spring. Now I'm an intern at Cisco, and I'm also vice president of Code for Community, which is a student club here that makes software for nonprofits.
My name's Annika. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm going into my 4th and final year at Northeastern as a computer science and business major with a concentration in finance. I just started this week my 2nd co-op, working as a software engineer at Salsify. And on campus, I am involved with Newitt and a few non-CS clubs, and then I'm on the organizing team for a Boston hackathon called Hack Beanpot. And I've TA'd as well for a few different courses over my time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to our panelists for the introductions. And I realized I didn't introduce myself. My name is Julie Van. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm the Assistant Director of First Year Programs and Student Engagement. And so you probably have received a lot of emails from me about different summer programming. And my job is really to make sure that you all have a smooth transition to Khoury Northeastern. And so I continue to welcome any feedback and comments throughout our session and after our session today. And then also I invite you all to turn on your cameras if you feel comfortable, especially as this is an opportunity for you to meet your peers. If not, if you don't feel comfortable with that, there's no pressure at all, but I do extend that invitation to you all. So we'll go ahead and get started with our questions. So my first question to our panelists is, what piece of advice would you give to a new student who is nervous about classes in the fall and the academic rigor?
I can start with that one. So I think the biggest piece of advice, and like the thing I would say the most important, is to not be afraid to ask for help, especially because in high school, like, you may not have felt like you always needed to, or it may not have been quite the environment where you wanted to ask for help, but that's so incredibly important in college. Sorry about the thunder in the background. Yeah, but there are so many different resources at your fingertips, office hours, professors, even older students that you might meet in classes or in clubs. Like, they all want to be able to help you. So definitely don't be afraid to put yourself out there and like reach out.
Yeah, echoing all of that, especially the ominous thunder after the word college. I would say that, like, definitely asking for help, not just for like older students, but also students who are in the same class as you. I know something that like got me through the first semester of computer science classes was having people I knew who were also in the class that I could talk to and ask for help. But also for me, like, I'm really bad with time management and juggling a lot of different things. So one thing that really helped me out, because I was really worried about going into college, was just like looking up what the courses are like looking at like the syllabus beforehand, even checking out some of the textbooks. It's like super not necessary, but just for me, it made me feel a lot better about being prepared for college.
Great, thank you for that. And of course, again, if you have questions for the panelists throughout, or if you want to wait to the end, feel free to put that in the chat. So as kind of a follow-up to that, so can someone speak about academic exploration and just learning more about different academic offerings, courses, majors that we offer here within Khoury, but also more broadly at Northeastern?
Yeah, so there were a couple of resources that I found really useful looking into my classes and what I wanted to take. The first was that you have to have a meeting with your academic advisor. So I came in a different major than I currently am. I came in, I think, as just information science, which I'm not sure is even offered anymore, but that was my major when I came into college. And I knew going into this meeting with my academic advisor that I wanted to see like all these different course plans. And they'll give you these spreadsheets of like how like your 4 or 5 years could look based on what major you chose, and like accounting for if you came in with any credits. So I had like 3 different versions of that with all these different majors. So that was one of the big things for me. And then there's also a website made by some Northeastern students in a group called Sandbox called Search NEU, which makes it really helpful to look for different classes. And yeah, that helped me look into it.
Yeah, I definitely use those resources a lot since I did a lot of exploring my interests and majors like during my first and second years. I came in as a data science and biochem major actually, and then I took my first bio class and I realized I'm not really interested in bio, so I switched to um, more business focused interests. So I took accounting, I took macro econ, and I really thought I was going to be like a data science and business major. But after taking those classes, I realized like, oh, maybe like focusing so much on business is not my thing either. So I switched to what I am now, which is a data science major and marketing minor. So yeah, everyone does a lot of exploring, and it's really okay to take classes, realize you're not really interested in them, even if they don't count towards your major or anything. That's totally okay. I feel like it's better to do your exploring, um, take some risks before really committing, or else like I feel like you'll regret not trying new things or not being able to really explore your interests when you really committed to a major and it's like too late to switch.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Annika and Rachel said. I also came in as a CS and bio combined major and then ended up switching to just CS. But also, on the other hand, like take classes that you think you might not be interested in just because you never know what will stick. For instance, for one of the new path classes I had to take, which are like the requirement or the required classes that cover a few different subject areas unrelated to your major, I took a philosophy class, which is nothing I'd ever really like explored before, and I ended up really enjoying it. And that's how I got started with my information ethics minor. I totally wouldn't have expected philosophy and computer science to go together, but they combine perfectly for that minor. So definitely don't be afraid to explore classes you might not have thought you'd be interested in.
Excellent. Thank you to our panelists for answering that question. It definitely sounds like you all really took the time to take classes that you were interested in or didn't really think that you might fit that into your plan somehow, but that really ended up changing the trajectory of your time at Northeastern and your academic plans. And I think one big thing is a lot of these panelists shared that, you know, what they started with their major ended up not being their major today, and that it's totally okay and totally normal to switch and change and to have doubts and want to explore new things. And so, especially as you all are entering, you know, this fall semester, really have that sense of exploration and feeling okay with that sense of exploration in mind, and using that as a thread throughout your college experience will really make a difference. So, great, thank you, panelists. For my next question for you all, what resources were most helpful to you during your first semester? And for example, what are office hours? I know that's something that's been throwing around. What are TAs, and how do you make the most of these resources?
Yeah, well, you read my mind. I think the most important resource to me my first semester was definitely office hours and TAs. At first, I was a little hesitant to use office hours and TAs because I wasn't really sure what they were or how it was going to be, and I didn't actually know any of the TAs personally. But no, like they're such a useful resource. They're really there to give you help. And for me, yeah, I really couldn't have gotten through Fundies 1 or 2 or like my first year at all really if I hadn't gone to TAs for help. Um, and yeah, the best way to make use of those resources is just like just ask when the people's office hours are and go. One like common pitfall is that sometimes people always go to like the latest office hours, so you want to kind of come earlier so you have more one-on-one time. But yeah, that was probably the most important resource.
I also just wanted to jump in. And so TAs, to explain what they are, they're students who have taken the course before. So most of the Khoury TAs for Fundies and other beginning classes are undergrads. So they've all taken the class, gotten through it, know exactly what you're dealing with, and are a great resource, as Ryan said.
Yeah, TAs really saved my life in like Fundies and OD, which is object-oriented design. But another great resource that I wanted to mention is your classmates. During office hours, usually on like the last days or the day before the homework is due, it's like packed and you have to wait like an hour or two just to talk to the TA. I guess because everyone just does their assignments really last minute. But one thing that helped me through these like fundamental classes was talking to classmates also in office hours and also waiting for help. So like just talking to the person next to you. This is when things were in person, but I'm sure in the fall it'll be similar to that. But everyone's super nice and willing to help, and it speeds up the process of getting the homework done because you're not just waiting for a TA. You could reach out to people next to you and stuff. And also during my classes, I would just reach out in the Zoom chat if anyone wants to make a study group. And especially for one of my classes, which is linear algebra, that really helped me get through the semester, get better grades just by talking to other students.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I feel like the biggest takeaways, utilize your resources. And there's so many people on campus and in your classes who are there to really support you, answer questions, and to make sure that you are feeling good about the materials that you are learning from your instructors during office hours. So that time where you can go in and talk to your instructors, but you're also your TAs, your teaching, which stands for teaching assistants, and then also your classmates as well. I know it can be really intimidating to, ask people if they want to form a study group or, if they want to study together, but I promise you, everyone is in the same boat and everyone wants to have that study group and wants to make friends and wants to have other connections as well to help with that studying and just building that community. And so I know it might be really scary to initiate, but being proactive and really taking that first step can really make a big difference. So that's a really helpful advice. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So for my next question, so a lot of students are coming in with no programming experience, and that, is a lot of students, and that is totally normal and fine. And so I know that, however, that might, you might feel a bit nervous about what that might look like, or just not having any programming experience or prior CS experience. What advice do the panelists have for those students who might be in that boat?
So I came into Northeastern with no prior programming experience, and I definitely felt those nerves myself. One of the biggest things that I did when I got here was go to clubs and like non-academic things related to CS. I think it's scary to be like, I'm going to this new field that I know not much about, and find people who already were passionate about it. So I went to Women in Tech meetings, as Rachel and GJ have also mentioned they go to and are a part of. I would go early and like try and talk to the people who were maybe a few years older at those meetings and like see their perspective. And it was also just really reassuring to like see people who are still interested in it and getting their help when I was like lost and not sure if I should stick in CS or not. So there's a lot of imposter syndrome, and that's okay.
Yeah, going off what Anika said, sorry, is it Anika?
Annika, it's okay.
Annika, I'm so sorry. Going what Annika said, I was in a similar situation where I was really afraid or really nervous about going into studying CS or data science without any coding experience. But I promise you, a lot of people are in the same boat, and the fundamental classes really help you out and really help level the playing field. So you might have to work a little harder than other people, but it's totally doable. And a lot of people have gone through it or are going through it with you.
Yeah, so it sounds like the biggest takeaway is so many people are in the same boat, not having experience, and that is okay. And there's so many resources, once you get started in the fall, even before the fall as well, to make sure that you're feeling prepared for the semester ahead and for these courses. And also, we also are opening some labs that are for those who are have no prior experience, so that you can be with other individuals who don't have prior CS experience as well, so that it's sort of like a learning community. And so when you were sent the survey a couple months ago, back in May, June, from advising about that, you did have that option. And so if that's something you're interested in, we can still make sure that you're connected with that piece of it as well, so that you're around community and feeling like you're with other individuals, so that you have that learning process together. For my next question for the panelists, what has been your favorite class that you have taken so far?
I can start with that one. So I'd say my favorite class that I've taken is one called Human Computer Interaction. That's the class that I've TA'd for. And I really like that class because it was pretty different than a lot of the other Khoury classes I've taken. Most CS classes are more focused on learning just technical skills, learning specific languages or how to code. But this class was more about how to design products in a way that is like the most user-friendly. And so we went through the entire like design life cycle, creating an app from start to finish, where we actually like talk to users throughout the process. And then that informed our decision of how to make the app. So I really like that kind of gave me a different perspective than most of my other CS classes have.
I can also hop in with a favorite class. Like Gigi, it's ones that are like more applied and not just technical. So I took two classes that had humanities elements to them. One that was tech and human values, and then Bostonography, which is the city through data, text, and maps, I think is like the full name of that. But so both of those allowed me to apply the technical skills like to these humanities and like real world situations. And I found that to be really useful as I went into co-op and like taking those critical thinking elements in along with the normal technical problem solving.
Awesome. Thank you to you both for sharing. So tons of different classes that you can take at Khoury and Northeastern. And so tying back to that sense of exploration, make sure to use that as an opportunity to continue to take classes, because once you leave this setting in terms of college, and even like when you go on to higher education after college, you don't really get this opportunity to explore in the same way. So trying to make the most of it is a piece of advice I would share with you all as it relates to that. My next question for the panelists, does anybody have a story about quote unquote failing, where it's not really failure, but just maybe you had a setback and how you were able to recover and overcome it?
So in one of my classes that I took, actually the past semester in the spring, I took linear algebra. And then for the first test I took, I actually did really bad. I got like worse than most of the kids in my class. But yeah, it was rough. But I decided to be a little more proactive. I usually never do this type of stuff, but I reached out to the Women in Tech Club. We have a Slack channel where you could post academic questions. And so I reached out to the members in the club, and saw if they wanted to form a study group with me. And so a lot of people actually reached out, which is great. And I was able to study and prep for the next test with these members, and that was really helpful. And my grades got a lot better just from working with other people.
Yeah, I can take this one as well. So I took a web development class this past spring semester as well. And I would say it was definitely like one of the toughest classes I've taken, especially at the beginning. I didn't know too many people in the class, and a lot of the material was like really unfamiliar to me. So I didn't do too well on the first few homework assignments. But as I got to know more people in the class and started going to office hours more often, I was able to do a lot better, and my final project worked out really well. And I actually now I'm doing web development with my current co-op. So it was kind of like a nice full circle that I was able to have there.
Excellent. Thank you so much to our panelists. Those are all the formal questions that I have for our panelists, though I could continue to ask more, but I wanted to make sure that you all have an opportunity to ask the questions that you want to our panelists. So there's a couple of different ways we can do this. You can either feel free to unmute yourself and directly ask your question to our panelists, or you can type in the chat, or if you don't want it to be identified with the question, feel free to direct message me and I'll ask your question on your behalf without saying who it's associated with. So a couple different ways to ask your question, but this is really your time to speak with current Khoury students and ask any questions that you have as relates to academics and campus resources. So feel free to start submitting your questions now. Really, you can ask any question that you want. What is it like interacting with instructors? What's fundies like? Best study spots on campus, anything. Learn the secrets because not everyone's in this room today. And so feel free to ask these questions so that you feel like you have a leg up once we get started in the fall. All right, so I have a question and it's more related to co-op, and I think that's okay. But for panelists who've been on co-op, how did you find your first co-op opportunity?
I found my first co-op using Northeastern's own portal, NU Works, or was that the old name? What is it called now? But using a portal that has thousands of opportunities that Northeastern has built with partners in Boston and around the globe.
Yeah, that's also what I use to find mine as well, New Works. One other thing to keep an eye out for when you are looking for your first co-op is a lot of companies will do sort of like recruiting or information sessions where they'll just come and do like a quick presentation about their company and talk about what they're looking for. So I did go to one of those for Johnson & Johnson. And then I think I mentioned that in my oh my gosh, my cover letter when I was applying. So things like that can help as well.
And also, I feel like Northeastern does a good job of providing a lot of resources for you. For example, they hold events, like networking events, where a lot of companies can come. And I actually met the company that I currently co-op at one of these networking events, and that's really cool to see. They also give you a lot of resources for building your resume, your LinkedIn profile, everything like that. So I feel like most people find a co-op pretty easily here.
Yeah, this is a different question, but I just saw it. It's relevant. It was difficult to find a co-op, and how many positions do you apply to? I would say same as everyone else. Like I applied through Northeastern's co-op system called NU Works, and I mean personally for me it was really difficult for me to find my first co-op, but also I applied at a really unfortunate time. So this is this was last fall, so it was pretty bad. I applied to 70-ish. And then I got 2 interviews, and that was fun. But I don't know, people have different experiences, and it's sometimes difficult. The good thing about applying in the fall is you could always defer to next semester as well. But yeah, I'd say I think in normal times it's not difficult to find a co-op, but you may not always get your first pick.
Yeah, I can definitely second that experience. My first co-op search, which was right before the pandemic started, I got my position the week everything shut down. My first co-op search, I applied to 80 positions. My second, I think it was less than 20. It gets easier as you get more things.
Yeah, and I would say to be really proactive, especially the first time you apply, because you have to get clearance to go on co-op. So you need to meet with your co-op advisor and stuff. And then only after your meeting you get access to the co-op job page called NU Works. And so being really proactive with getting on top of that, I know some people even applied like before they got in, which is like kind of extra, but like still, being proactive is really useful.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. And if you're like, oh my gosh, I have not applied yet for co-op, do not worry, like you are totally fine. But it's like Ryan said, good to be proactive and just thinking about these things and asking these questions now. It's really good that you're already thinking about it and making sure that you're setting up in a good space. But also, like, don't worry too much about it. You haven't even started yet. So make sure that you have that strong foundation so that when you get to that time of applying for co-op, you're in a solid foundation to really submit your application and be a viable candidate. All right, I'm seeing a lot of questions, so I love it. Keep them coming. I'm just going to continue to go down the list and ask our panelists. So another question, computer science is a very course heavy major. How do you find the space in your schedule to explore classes?
So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with NewPath, but I briefly mentioned it earlier. It's basically the requirements to take classes in like a bunch of different subject areas. So for instance, like creative expressions, which is like some sort of like art or music class, or what are some other ones? Like I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but basically Northeastern kind of builds in these requirements to take classes across a whole variety of areas. And that's a really great way to explore classes that might not have fit into your major otherwise. So you can use your general electives for that. Yeah.
Yeah, even if you come in with credit, there's probably a few new paths you'll still have to fill. So you'll have the space to do that in order to graduate.
If you have any questions about your schedule or trying to make sure that you can fit everything in, your academic advisor is always a great resource as well to reach out once you get started. And they also have drop-ins throughout the summer as well if you have questions about that. But yes, the new path is a really great way to fit in. And it's built into your plan where you have to take these classes outside of your major. So they're kind of forcing you to explore, which is kind of nice in that way. Excellent. Another question. So what is the best study spot on campus? Is anybody willing to share their secrets on their best or favorite study spots?
I would say the top floor of Snell. There's like these wooden desks, and I actually go there sometimes for work. And you go in a corner and you just sit there, and no one, you could be in this little like cubby. It's kind of cute. Also, West Village H, also known as the Khoury College of Computer Science building, has a lot of cool little like nooks and crannies where there's couches and places to sit. So that's pretty good.
One place I really like is in Khoury, our student center. There's like an outdoor patio. And in like the warmer months, it's really nice to sit out there and work.
Also, another thing is that a lot of the classrooms just throughout campus are usually open. So me and my friends would often like go to just like an empty classroom and like work on our homework together. And then it's nice because like you have the whiteboard as well, and you have like the desks, everything's set up for you nicely. So that's another option.
Excellent. This sounds like some really great spots. For our next question, how was the transition to college courses from high school classes?
Well, I don't know if I speak for everyone, but for me, it was actually easier, weirdly enough, because I always was, well, to be fair, for context, I came into college with CS experience, and it was something I really enjoyed, I was passionate about. And so, yeah, I was really into all my CS classes, even when I wasn't doing well in them. I was like, yeah, this is awesome, doing great. So yeah, and then most of them I did pretty well, but yeah, I really enjoyed just being able to learn what I wanted to learn, and in that sense, it was better than high school.
The biggest part of the transition for me was definitely the independence aspect of it. Like it was a lot more self-directed than high school was, where you basically had homework due almost every day. And instead now you're having a deadline for a class maybe once a week. So that was the big transition of being like, okay, I need to start thinking about how my whole week fits together in order to get things done.
Excellent, thank you. So I have a question, and I'm not sure if anybody on the panel identifies as an international student, but someone asked, as an international student, is there a time that you can't keep up with others just because of language issues? I don't think anybody is. Oh, go ahead,
I'm
Ryan.
not an international student, but my roommate is, and I lived in Singapore actually. I know there's someone else from Singapore. I lived in Singapore for a while, so I know a lot of people who um, do speak English as a second language, and it is definitely like an obstacle. But I feel like people in Northeastern are generally like really understanding of people who I guess aren't as fluent in English, and also like there's a huge and pretty like understanding international student community here, and so yeah, it's pretty awesome. I'd say it's not something you have to super worry about.
Yeah, and I also add on to that, we have the Office of Global Studies, where they will continue to provide resources and support you however you need. If you need additional support or accommodations or anything like that, they are always a resource where they would specifically work with international students. All right, another question. Was it difficult to balance social life with Bundy's work and other CS work?
I would say first semester, it did take some getting used to. Of all my semesters, I think that was probably the one where it was toughest to like figure out that balance. I mean, again, kind of like what Annika was saying, because there's a lot more independence than in high school and things are less structured. Like it's up to you to figure out how you want to fit everything together. So first semester, it was a bit tough to figure out how to do things outside of my classes, but definitely by the end of it and like second semester and everything, I think I'd kind of figured it out and was able to like have a better balance.
Yeah, just to build off that, in college you get a lot of um, free time, or not free time, but like time where you have to personally manage it. So I feel like time management is something that you really get to develop. But also, I feel like balancing a social life or a life outside of academics is super important as well. Just to like take your mind off CS, not make it your whole life. Even though it is important, but sometimes I realize that when I'm doing something else that's not CS related, like skateboarding or sewing, it actually helps me like think about my code and like just take a break from it and find a solution. So in some ways, it actually helps you code better.
That's excellent advice. Thank you, everyone. All right, so I have a couple of other questions as it relates to co-op, and I know we spoke a little bit about co-op and answered some of these questions, but just in case anybody wanted to add on to these questions, just so that I make sure that we honor these questions. How long and how much effort does it typically take to find a co-op opportunity? Was it difficult to find a co-op, and how many positions did you apply to? I know we did touch on this, but if anybody wanted to add anything else in addition to all things related to co-op.
One thing I think didn't get mentioned before is that we actually do take a co-op like prep class the semester that we're applying to co-op. So you really don't need to worry about doing any applications until your second year. And then that co-op prep class will help you get your resume ready. It'll help you with your interviewing skills. It'll help you get set up with your co-op advisor, who is the person you're going to go to with all of your questions for co-op and everything. So Northeastern really does like a great job of providing you with the resources. They don't just like throw you in and say, okay, like find a co-op now. So I wouldn't worry about it too much your first year, especially just focus on like your classes and clubs and everything like that. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Gigi. Yeah, that's a really great reminder. And like, just focus on like making sure that you're, doing strong academically, get involved and adjust and everything. And then there are built-in resources like the co-op prep class. And then also one thing that we're working on, knowing that, you all have a lot of questions already about co-op and really wanting to get prepared, we are working on building some modules around just getting prepared for co-op, thinking about your resume, thinking about like, what is a personal project? And is that something you're interested in doing, and just getting experience and things like that as a precursor to that co-op class as well. So more information to come around that for the fall, but thank you everyone for sharing all that. Another question, can any of the panelists share study abroad experiences? Has anybody in this group studied abroad?
Unfortunately, with the pandemic, it's very difficult for people our 2 years to have studied abroad, I think.
Yeah, I will say I know someone. I have a good friend who was going to go to University of Zurich. I don't know when. I think either next semester or next semester. And it's difficult sometimes to find classes that match up. But from what I've heard, it's pretty fun experience. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just going to put in the chat the link to our Office of Global Experience. And that's a really great connection point to learn more about studying abroad and just abroad experiences. I know that a lot of students, they have concerns around, you know, I want to study abroad, but I know that I want to do CS and it's going to be academically rigorous, and I want to do co-op and I want to do all the things. And like, how do I fit all that in? We do have a lot of different opportunities for you to be able to study abroad, and students do it. And I think a huge part is just, using this resource as a starting place, but also talking to your academic advisor as well, because we have like summer dialogues and things like that, where it's a shorter period of time or during the summer, so that you can make sure that you are still getting your core coursework done. And so there are many different opportunities to do so. And this is a great starting point. And then also your advisor. And then I realized I did not put that in the chat yet. So let me do that. All right. For our next question, as there are many concentrations to choose from in CS, how could someone decide which concentration is most interesting to them?
So each semester, usually, there is a presentation about the different concentrations. In the past, Ben Hescott has done it, so he's one of the deans. And so he kind of goes over the different concentrations, what classes are involved, what careers might kind of relate to those concentrations. So that was super helpful for me in terms of deciding. But the other thing to keep in mind is, like, I didn't initially realize this, but your concentration isn't like the end all be all of your computer science degree. Like, at the end of the day, your degree is going to say computer science. It's only a few extra classes that you can kind of like specialize in an area that you're interested in. It's kind of a talking point, but it's not really like make or break. So don't stress too much over it, I would say.
Yeah. I don't know if y'all have met Dean Hescott, but he's a character. He's a really cool guy. When the pandemic started, he gave us a house tour. It was fun. Anyway, yeah, I would say adding on to that, something kind of danced around is like there's a lot of different clubs, and through those clubs you could really like figure out what you're maybe interested in. Like there's a data science club, there's like entrepreneurial clubs like Code Community or Sandbox or Generate or Idea, where you can kind of do co-op like experiences and see how that's like. And there's tons of different clubs in Khoury that can really tell you more about like what you really enjoy about CS. And it's also another way to like figure out what you want to do.
And that was fantastic advice. Yeah, and using things outside of your classes, like extracurriculars, to explore what you're interested in, co-op experiences to determine what you're interested in. And like Gigi said, we have a concentration event every single semester, led by one of our advisors, and then also Dean Hescott, which if you haven't met him already, you likely will, because he is a strong presence in our college and really cares about the undergraduate experience. And it is definitely a person that you want to make connections with. But he speaks really candidly about the different concentrations, and it's a really great resource. And so we have those resources built in for you to explore and also just learn more directly from one of our assistant deans who's a professor as well. Excellent. All right. So we spoke about this a little bit, but if in case anybody wants to add anything extra, I've heard that computer science students take classes typically averaging around 18 to 19 credits a semester. Is there room to explore classes outside of your major? Yeah, I know we spoke about new path and general education requirements and everything, electives as a way to explore, and then also clubs and extracurriculars to explore as well, even in a non-academic class type setting. Anything else any of the panelists would add?
I would just say it doesn't always end up around those 18 to 19 credits. Those are usually, so you have 4 core classes, which makes 16, and then a few of those might have a lab or a recitation. So your first semester, you'll reach that 18 or 19 because you have fundies, discrete, and then the 1 credit intro to college class, but most semesters won't be that case. So a more 16 average, I would say.
Yes, hopefully that eases some nerves in the room. That's great. And another question, so around what time would you advise us to start applying for co-ops? And I can take this one and, the panelists can add in. So you'll have what is called a POA pattern of attendance, which will determine what semester you'll go on co-op. And then the semester before, I believe it was, someone spoke about this, the co-op prep course. So you'll take that course the semester before you go on co-op or apply for co-op. And that will prepare you for your co-op experience. But it depends. And if you're interested in your pattern of attendance, you can always check in with your advisor. They can share more about what that will look like. But does any of the panelists, do any of the panelists have anything to add on to that? Okay. This is a good question. What was your favorite coding project from one of your classes?
I can go. I took a class called data visualization. It was DS 4200 if anyone's interested in the future, but it's a service learning class. So our projects partnered with Boston organizations, Boston nonprofits. So we used their data sets to help create visualizations that would be useful for them. So it was really cool to get to communicate with them and like create something that would actually be helpful for them.
For one of my classes, I took Foundations of Data Science, and I think we started like mid-semester to the end of the semester, we had to build a project. And what my group did was trying to predict the star rating of restaurants on Yelp. And that was really cool because I learned a lot about data science, and also it's a really interesting topic to explore.
My favorite project was not one that was like super interesting on its own merit, but it was like the experience. So this was fun, accelerated fundies too, with Ben Lerner, and they had us do like a project in Java, and it was basically making the game Centipede, which actually is not a very popular game, but it's like this like retro game, and he made us made it in class. And I remember I was feeling confident with my pair programming partner about how it was going, and then one day in lecture he just like turned the entire project around and added like a ton more requirements. And yeah, I spent like almost a week trying to get that to work. That was a lot of fun. It was painful, but it was a lot of fun, actually. That was a favorite.
Thank you everyone for sharing. Hopefully that gives a little insight into some of the projects you might be working on or exposed to at some point in your career. Excellent. Let's see. Another question. What was the workload for discrete structures and fundies, and about how many hours a week did you spend studying for them?
I think it depends a lot on like what you really like and how you learn, because I feel like fundies and discrete are like really different classes. in a lot of ways. So discrete's more like a traditional math class, I would say, in a lot of ways. Not really, but it's a lot more like a math class where it's a lot of just content and listening to lectures. Fundies one is there's like a lab, of course, and the lectures are like program oriented. And really the challenge there for Fundies one is the homeworks. Well, also same for discrete, but I would say if you're like more of a mathy person, you probably might like discrete more. And if you're more of like a programming person, you like Fundies one. For me, I was okay with Fundies one, but I really struggled for discrete. And ooh, I probably spent like, yeah, I spent too long on those discrete homeworks. I don't know if I give a number like hours per week, but I was definitely struggling to get submitted. But to be fair, I should have gone to office hours, going back to that, to get help on those. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also spent a lot more time on discrete than I did on fundies. One thing that I found really useful for getting the workload done is I lived in the LLC, like the living learning community for CS freshman year, and it was in one of the dorms, Whitehall. It probably is in a different place now, but in our like common room, like it would just become discrete zones sometimes, and like people would be using whiteboards, and it was helpful for studying. Like group work is very helpful for studying overall. I think that's been touched on.
Yeah, the same thing happened. I was also in the computer science LLC, but ours was in Smith Hall. And like the night it was due, like sometimes some people, sometimes being me, would just go around begging people to explain the homework, like really desperately. It was pretty sad, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. And yeah, that was discrete, sometimes painful, but it does force you to talk to people at least. So that's good.
Yeah, some good lessons there. Go to office hours, get started early, and don't be afraid to, lean on your peers because people are probably in the same boat as well. And so, especially if you are living in the residence halls, that's a really great place to be able to connect with your peers, especially, as you're burning the midnight oil and it's kind of at the last minute. But again, going back to the point of being proactive, I think that's also important to keep in mind. So great. Thank you to you both. Let's see, for the next question, let's see. Briefly touch on this, but again, if anybody wanted to add on to this, what advice would you give to incoming students who are new to CS to help prepare for the fall? What about when we are already on campus?
I'll just reiterate a few of the like biggest things, I guess. You can look over the syllabi when you get on campus. Like a lot of the fundies allows you to kind of preview things that are coming up. So you can look into that like once you're on campus. And then as we talked about, like clubs have been really helpful, and just talking with other students is probably the biggest thing.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's see. We have a couple of questions that we've already answered about, like how to decide your concentration. We have a question about, what is required during the early days in terms of kind of like welcome events and those type of experiences. So is anybody interested in sharing a bit more about your experiences with the orientation and welcome day type events as students start to move on to campus and enter to Boston?
Yeah, I can go for that one. So usually there's a club fair where like the whole entire campus is just set up with people from different clubs. So you can walk around to each booth and like get a little bit of information. So I'd really highly recommend going to that, because like that's a great way to learn about other student organizations, and you can like figure out what you might be interested in. I would say just go to as many things as you think you can, because you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know like what's going to stick. I ended up at a table with a few like random people in one club, and they're now 3 of my best friends. So like you really never know like how things are going to work out. So I can't like emphasize it enough. Just try different things out. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, and just take advantage of like all of the different Welcome Week events.
Yeah, that is great advice. When you're going to these like club fairs, the one in fall is called Fall Fest. Um, Sign up for like as many clubs as you're interested in, because like a lot of these are very optional. Like you don't, there's like not a requirement to like stay in a club. So sign up for as many clubs as you want.
Excellent. Thank you everyone for sharing. So I have a question, and I'll take this one actually. So I heard that Fun Days has a lot more people this year than previous years. Is it possible that Fun Days becomes a weed out class? So no, we want you to be successful. We're not trying to weed anyone out. You know, we're really excited in Khoury because our trend is that we're continuing to grow every single year as a college, which is really exciting because that means more people, more diverse perspectives, more diverse identities, which is really exciting. And so we want to make sure that you're successful. We want to be inclusive of all those different perspectives, especially as, you know, computer science and the tech industry continues to grow. It's really important that we continue to make sure that everyone feels supported. And so, you know, like a lot of the panelists have spoken so far, there are office hours, there are, you know, teaching assistant TAs, all these different ways, your classmates that you can lean on, you know, advisors and myself and my role to continue to provide support for you all to make sure that you have a positive learning experience and that you feel like you can be successful. And if there's something that's missing that you feel like, you know, this is something that I really need to make sure that I'm successful, I'm always open to that feedback. I know your advisors are always open to that feedback, so that we can continue to make sure that, again, you have all the resources that you need to be successful. So we are not trying to weed anyone out. We love that it's growing, and we want to make sure that we continue to meet that growth by continuing to provide all the resources as possible. So that's kind of something on my end. Anybody else want to share anything as relates to that at all?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like Fundies is hard, but it's not at all weed out class, I would say. Um, uh, I think that as long as you follow the design recipe, you'll be fine. Or go to office hours. If you really need to, you could read the textbook. One thing that's sort of common is sometimes people have trouble coordinating or working with their pair programming partner and are afraid to swap. One thing people don't often know is that you could change your partner. So if you have a partner that's being unresponsive or generally not a nice person, you could work with around that. But yeah, overall, like, no, all the core staff and the professors want you to succeed in Fundies. So yeah, definitely not a weed out class. I wouldn't say.
Yes, because we really value that CS for all, whether you have prior experience or not. We want to make sure that you're successful. And again, so many people here to provide that support for you. With that, I know we have 1 or 2 more questions, but we are running out of time. And so those who wanted to have those questions answered, want to stick around, please let us know. But thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you so much to our panelists. And so feel free to give them a round of applause, say thank you in the chat. You can use the emoji and react with the clapping. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your perspectives with us. I feel like this was so informative and so much great information shared. And before we go, I have a couple different announcements I'm going to post into the chat. So the first one is that if you have any questions at all for the panelists, you know, after our conversation together, feel free to send me an email. I'm putting my information into the chat and I can forward to the panelists themselves and make sure that we get your questions answered. But we want to make sure that you feel like all your questions are answered after this event. We have a post-event feedback survey. So if you have a minute or 2 right now, please fill out this survey. We would really appreciate your feedback just to know what things we can continue to do to improve future events, what things you would like to see. It is anonymous, so feel free to, you know, share your honest and candid feedback. However, if you would like to, as incentive for folks to complete this feedback survey, we are doing a raffle for 5 people at the end of the summer who come to these events and fill out these surveys. We'll give you kind of this prize package of Khoury swag, so that's really exciting. So if you are interested in entering the raffle, fill out the form, and then also at the very end, I'll ask for your name and your email. And that's only for the purposes of the raffle. We won't use that as any identifier for your responses. And then for our next event, we have our next event next week, similar to this format. So it's Student Perspectives. So current students sharing their perspectives, but this one will be around connecting with community, more around making friends, meeting people, making connections. How do I get involved on campus? And all those type of questions. So we hope to see you there. Again, that's on Tuesday, July 13th from 6 to 7 Eastern Standard Time. And then all registration and to see our full lineup of future events, you can see it at that link right there on our website. And so a couple different items on my end. Thank you again so much to our panelists for being here tonight. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. And we hope to see you at the next event. If you have any questions, I'll stick around to answer them. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your days and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.